Baroness Berridge.
My lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My lords, my right honourable friend, the Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary, issued a statement on the 10th of October expressing his profound concern over the violence in Cairo on the 9th of October. He urged all Egyptians to refrain from violence, support the Egyptian Prime Minister's call for calm, and for all sides to engage in dialogue. He said that the freedom of religious belief needs to be protected and that the ability to worship in peace is a vital component of a democratic society.
I do thank my noble friend the Minister for his thoughtful and comprehensive reply to the question. And I do hope the Minister will agree that Egypt is to be commended for the successful application of the rule of law to former President Mubarak, who is currently being prosecuted for ordering the killing of protesters in the January Revolution. And whilst Her Majesty's government would not wish to interfere in Egypt's internal affairs, is my noble friend the Minister satisfied that a military investigation into military actions on October the 9th will also result in the successful application of the rule of law to those who ordered and killed peaceful Coptic protesters?
Well, I think there's no room for satisfaction either in our own minds or indeed, as I understand it, in the minds of the Egyptian government. There is a government commission appointed to examine the situation, but my right honourable friend has had a detailed conversation with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Mr. Amro, on the 12th of October and urged him most strongly to establish all the facts and to, in the words of the Egyptian, to see what went wrong. There are certainly several different versions of what occurred, but the clear result is that many people died and that this kind of violence is completely unacceptable. We have, as you know, a very close dialogue with Egypt at the moment. We are involved in a helpful and supportive way, not in interfering, but in encouraging and supporting the de-escalation of the situation and the restoration of law and order and the call for civilians not to be tried in military courts and the removal of the state of emergency. So the dialogue is there, the pressure is there, and I believe the Egyptian government realizes that this kind of appalling event will greatly damage their future and must be, in all accounts, prevented and avoided in the future.
My Lords, is the Minister aware of reports that judges in some Egyptian courts are refusing to accept evidence from Copts? Does he know if there is any truth in such reports? And if he is not aware, I wonder if the Minister will be kind enough to make inquiries and write to me.
Well, I have to say that the assessment of reports is certainly one of the propositions which we have offered in support of the situation in Egypt is that the civilians should not be tried in military courts. It's not quite the point that the noble Baroness made, but it is related to it. As for the question about their judgments, I will make some further inquiries and see if I can illuminate my answer to the noble Baroness.
Lords, would the noble Lord the Minister agree that part of the underlying problem in the situation we've seen unfolding recently is a prolonged failure on the part of the security forces to guarantee the safety of Christian personnel and property, not only in the Aswan province in recent months, but over a longer period? It seems clear to many of us that this is what is bringing Muslims and Christians together in Egypt in great distress and anxiety about the dismantling of a long history of fruitful cooperation and coexistence in the country. As we have been reminded, there is a commission of inquiry promised by the Egyptian administration. I hope that Her Majesty's government will continue to press contacts within that government, not only on the objectivity, the proper distance of that inquiry from the military establishment, but also press that there be consideration in such an inquiry of the record of the security forces over this period.
Well, I think we're all grateful to the most noble and the most reverend and noble primate for his insights into the situation, and he's absolutely right about the long history of these pressures and difficulties and as well as, of course, the recent evidence of a rising tone of extremism in the clashes that have occurred. I can only reassure him that the dialogue is continuous, the pressure is on. In our discussions, in my Right Honourable Friend's discussions with the Egyptian authorities, the understanding is established that this must be a clear and full inquiry into what really happened, and that the control of the security forces and the policies of the security forces must be even-handed, and there must be work towards a unified law with equal rights for all faiths and religions in the matters of building mosques and churches, of course, and in their protection from violence and their proper protection by the security forces. So the noble and reverend primate is absolutely right. These are the aims we will continue to pursue with great vigour.
Would the noble Lord the Minister return to the question which the noble Baroness Lady Berridge put to him earlier about these events at Maspero where this terrible massacre occurred, and specifically her point about the nature of the inquiry which is to be conducted? Would he agree that, contrary to some of the reports which appeared, which suggested that this was a clash between equals, that these civilians were gunned down, that they were unarmed, that they were run over by vehicles, all which were in the ownership of the Egyptian army? How can it be right now that the army should carry out the inquiry?
Well, I think this is a perfectly serious and valid query, and I recognise the interest of the noble lord in it. We will pursue this matter of the nature of the inquiry. There are a whole swirl of different versions of what occurred. The propositions of some were that the army were not officially authorised to act, that they were supplied with blank bullets, and that the shooting took place when other parties intervened. Other people say exactly as the noble lord has said. I think certainly one has to get to the bottom of this what occurred, and we will press very hard for the Egyptian authorities to do that. Certainly that the present situation has too many unreliable versions to be regarded as satisfactory. More truth must come out.
My lords, would my noble friend accept that there is no advantage to be gained by the military and the Islamists, the Egyptian Brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood, getting together against Egypt's Christian communities? And I wonder whether he would reflect on news reports that the military is now seeking to delay the presidential election until after a constituent assembly has been formed, perhaps push it back as far as the late 2013, and that the best method of preserving Egypt's diversity under the rule of law is for an early transition to democratic rule.
Well, the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Mr. Amro, told my right honourable friend that the lower house elections would go ahead in November, and the presidential elections would be next year, possibly next summer. But that is what he said. I agree totally with my noble friend that it's nobody's interest for these elections to be further delayed, and we have made that absolutely clear to the Egyptian ministers and authorities, that the sooner we get forward with this sequence of return to full democracy, the better, and early presidential elections are very much part of that.
We have, of course, a virtually insoluble dilemma about Britain, in any sense, directly addressing the question on behalf of somehow the rights of the Coptic Christians. But looking ahead to the reconstruction, the revolution is fairly recent, looking ahead to the reconstruction of Egypt, whether it's infrastructure investment, social policy, tourism or anything else, is it not reasonable to visualise, as we've done with a number of countries, that in the dialogue, I think it would have to be done under the European Union, because they can't be accused of imperialism in the same sense as perhaps Britain can, but that's an arguable point, that they would have to include a wide range of social, religious freedom, human rights questions in that dialogue with Egypt. And would it be more useful for the British government to, as it were, help stimulate discussion fairly soon about the forum for dialogue, so that the whole of Egyptian public opinion can be somehow brought on board as being part of the dialogue?
Well, I think I see what the noble lord is getting at, that certainly our support and help, and I repeat, not interference with the affairs of the Egyptian nation, our support and help is geared to that kind of development. We are backing non-government organizations that are promoting think tanks and discussion groups to try and widen the political diversity and support the role of women in the political process, and develop a number of other activities, or to support the evolution of sensible, balanced party politics. So this is what we are seeking to do, in addition to some very substantial aid through the Arab Partnership in various other social areas. But the general thrust is, I think, in line with what the noble lord was saying.
My lords, the persecution of Coptic Christians did not begin with the revolution. Can the noble lord say that he will press for inquiries about unlawful killings that took place before the revolution, quite possibly at the same hands as those that took place after, will be pursued?
Well, the noble lord is quite right in echoing what was said a moment ago, that this goes back into history, and is in a sense not a new problem, although it has assumed a horrific newness or novelty in the rise of extremist attacks and the involvement in a very extreme way of the Salafists and other movements against in this case against the Christian community and the Coptic community. We believe very strongly that all faiths, or all freedom and belief of worship by all faiths, should be protected in every possible way. So the need for inquiry both into past misdemeanors and past violence, in order to understand the roots of the present violence, is indeed extremely important.
Freedom of information, designation as public authorities, Order 2011, Lord McNally.